thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And if you'd like, you can subscribe and leave a rating and review, which is very helpful to me, and it helps other people find this content. So if you like it, I really appreciate you letting others know. So we've been talking all month long about different barriers to body kindness, and we've hit at it from a number of different angles. And I really hope you've enjoyed and gotten benefit out of those types of conversations. Well, it is the end of October and we're ending our series, and I could not be more, I don't know if excited is the right word, but yes, excited, because I do think that this work will help other people. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm on this planet. But, we know October to be Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I had the very unique opportunity to collaborate with a friend who is an amazing female director and really can tell powerful stories in film. And she also was the director of my book trailer and the body kindness stories that you might see on YouTube. And I made a new friend who is also a Rebecca. I just love Rebecca's. And she just is such a wonderful, amazing, inspiring person to get to know through this project. So I just wanted to let you all know how important this episode is to me on a personal level, and why I got involved in this project. When I was, 16 and in the center of my own world, I lost my grandma to breast cancer, and I miss her all the time. And I think that I was a young girl, and it was hard, but now that as a mom, I really feel the pain of what it's like to lose someone far too early. And I look back at it now as a time of my life of difficulty. And I feel like it's time we start talking a little bit more about difficulty. And because what's really important is to tell the stories of resilience. And so we are closing out Breast Cancer Awareness Month by opening up this next series of conversations about what it's like when your body betrays you, and what it's like to be going through the resilience part. And, there's not a roadmap, and there's no one direct line. So this is about hearing stories from people from all different walks of life with all different types of challenges, and hitting their low points and what they did to connect to others and to become a different person. We know the saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And we are meant to face difficulty and challenges in our life. And so my hope through this whole series is that we can learn and feel something meaningful through others' stories of struggle, and also feel something hopeful for our own struggles. So if you have thoughts on this series, I would love for you to send me an email. It's Rebecca@bodykindnessbook.com. I'd love to hear how this series is impacting you. And then mostly with this particular conversation in this first episode, I really would like you to take action by the end of the episode, and please share the information that we provide so you can watch the film, learn Rebecca's story, and be an advocate for people who need you. And personally, I just feel grateful that I finally found a way to honor my grandma's life and all the love I have for her. And I think about my daughters and think about myself, and just how important self-care is, how important our well-being is, no matter what we face. And so I'm just grateful to both Kareth and Rebecca, not only for this conversation, but for doing the project and for giving me a place to honor and remember someone I love very, very deeply. And I really hope you take something powerful away from this episode, and you will do everything you can to support the cause and share. Even just to share, likes and shares matter. So that is significant, and that's enough. You can get lots of information for how you can support at the website that we'll share on the episode, bareshortfilm.com. And you can also ask me, and I'll be more than happy to share ways you can get involved. Thank you so much again for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show and our entire series on body kindness and resilience.
What if I never feel beautiful again? Who will I be without my hair? Without my breasts? I'm single. I'm 25. What guy is going to want a bald, breastless, sick girl?
Well, you got a great ass, right? I mean, who needs boobs when you got a butt like that?
That's right. You also have great legs. You have the best legs out of all of us.
Mm-hmm. And we'll get you those flowy tops that are still sexy somehow, like drapey.
And somehow you managed to still have bigger boobs than I do. So you're fine.
Oh my God, bigger boobs than all y'all.
That was a scene from the new short film Bare, a new film about how a young woman copes with her cancer diagnosis through a defiant act. And I'm here today with the film's director, Kareth Lemon of Lemon Pictures, and the film's co-writer, Rebecca Hall. Thank you guys so much for being here. How are you doing today?
We're good.
Doing well. Thank you so much for having us on.
Well, why don't we just dive right in? Kareth, why don't you tell me a little bit about the film?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have known Rebecca Hall for many, many years. We grew up riding horses together. And several years ago, I saw her post on social media that she actually had breast cancer. And I was really in awe of seeing how all of her friends came together to help support her. And then last summer, she shared a really beautiful short story that she had written about her experience and kind of that emotional journey that she had to go on, that as, you know, a 25-year-old is very different from that, you know, somebody that maybe is a bit older and has experienced more life goes on. And I was just so touched by the story. It was so visual and so compelling, so authentic. I reached out to her to ask her if I could turn it into a film, and thankfully she said yes.
Wow. So this film is really, it's based on what you went through.
Yes, correct. So I was 25 when I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And I was in graduate school at the time, in veterinary school, and had to step out to start chemo and radiation and have surgery and all of that jazz. And a couple years after I had been in remission, I began to write about what I had been through. And so I wrote this short story about 3 of my closest childhood friends shaving my head before my first chemotherapy. And that was when Kareth reached out to me and suggested turning it into a short film, which was very exciting. And I enthusiastically agreed.
Well, take me back to the beginning and tell me what happened. Like, because I can't imagine most young women question, you know, hey, I think I might have cancer. Let me go to the doctor. Like that. I highly doubt that's how it all happened. So enlighten me.
So I was totally healthy. I've been very athletic my whole life. You know, my mom cooked meals from scratch every night for my whole childhood. I lived a very healthy life and was in veterinary school, was in my first quarter, and I went for a run one day. It was a Saturday, and I laid down on the floor to stretch. And as I laid down on my chest, I felt like I was laying on a golf ball. And I did this stretch almost every day of my life. So it was pretty sudden and jarring to have that sensation, because I had done that stretch the day before and felt totally fine. And so I felt my right breast, and sure enough, there was a pretty sizable lump in there, about the size of a golf ball. I had no family history of breast cancer. So while I had no reason to believe it was breast cancer, I'm the type of personality that if you're 20 minutes late for dinner, I'm worried that you died in a car crash. So I kind of immediately went to breast cancer. But it was a Saturday. There was not much I could do. So that Monday, I went to the Student Health Center at UC Davis, where I'm sure they see very few breast cancer patients, and told them I had this lump. The nurse felt it and said, don't worry about it. This really feels like a fibroadenoma, which is benign. I'll send you for a mammogram just in case, but really don't stress about this. So she sent me for the mammogram. The mammogram was worrisome. They did a biopsy right then and there at the mammogram facility. And my parents were with me at the time, and we kind of knew that things were not right based on facial expressions and what was being said to us. But we had to wait a few days for the biopsy results to come back. And then I was called back into the Student Health Center by the same nurse, who handed me a piece of paper, and it was a fax from the pathology clinic or facility with the words urgent, invasive ductal carcinoma written on it. And she just handed it to me with this look of like death on her face. And I just burst into tears. And that was it. Everything spiraled from there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was extremely unexpected. I remember after the first appointment, when the nurse told me it was almost certainly a fibroadenoma, I called my mom on the way out to the car, and she was in Safeway shopping. And I called her and was like, hi, Mom, do we have any family history of breast cancer? And she was like, what are you talking about? Like, no, we don't. What's going on here? And we had nothing in our family. So it was really, really shocking.
And so you were alone when you got that piece of paper?
Yeah. So my parents drove down to Davis, because my parents were living in Santa Cruz at the time, which is about 3 hours from Davis. So they drove down to be with me for the mammogram and the biopsy. And then they stayed in town until we knew if it was cancer or not. They came with me back to the Student Health Center to find the news, but I am a pretty stubborn person. I really like my independence, and I felt like I knew that it was going to be bad news. I mean, they don't call you in to have a face-to-face conversation to tell you good news. They call you in when it's bad news. So I felt like I needed to have that moment just to myself before everything exploded in my life, to process it for just a couple of minutes by myself. So I had my parents wait in the waiting room while I went into the exam room, and then called them in right after she told me that it was cancer. So I was alone when I very first got the news, and then they were with me for the rest of the conversation.
So what was the first, I mean, I'm just imagining that moment. I mean, it sounds horrific, like something, the last thing in the world you would want to experience, especially so young. And it sounds like a moment full of uncertainty, anger even. What did you do right away? What was your first?
When she first told me that it was cancer, I just burst into tears. That was it. And I put my arm over my face and I just cried. And then that actually only lasted for about 30 seconds. And then I kind of immediately switched into like, all right, what are we going to do about it? Because I need to finish veterinary school. I think that was my mind's way of coping with it. I wasn't ready to face the possibility that this could mean death or very serious consequences. And so I just focused on school, and my mind went straight to, but am I going to be able to finish the school year? So I said to her, what now? And she told me, chemo, maybe chemo, probably surgery and radiation. And all I cared about, honestly, was, well, how long am I going to be out of school for? Like, when am I going to be able to jump back into my studies? And it's not that was the most important thing in my life. It was just that was something concrete that I could focus on, because I wasn't ready to accept the more severe possibilities. So actually straight from that appointment, I made my parents drive me to the veterinary school, and I walked into the dean's office and sat down in her office completely unannounced and said, I'm a freshman here. I just found out I have breast cancer. Can I stay in school? That was literally the first thing I did. And I think that just really exemplifies how it was very hard for me to accept the extent of the severity of the situation and how dangerous it was and how much my life was about to change. All I could focus on was that I might be out of school for a couple of weeks while I recovered from surgery. And, it took me a little bit of time to wrap my head around the rest of it.
So what did the reality, what you had hoped and what actually happened look like for you?
Drastically different. So I was determined to stay in school. Even after the diagnosis, I went back to school. I went back to school. I went straight from the biopsy where I had basically like parts of my breast tissue hole punched out of me. And I made my parents drive me to my anatomy class that I had missed half of. And I spent half of the anatomy class with ice packs packed into my bra, hoping no one would notice. And then I went straight from my first visit with an oncologist to my anatomy final, like literally from one to the other, because I was so determined to stay in school. I didn't want to miss anything. So for the first few weeks, it was just appointment school, and that was it. And I think it was almost good for me because it gave me something else to focus on. And then winter break rolled around and I started chemotherapy over winter break. And after a couple weeks of chemo, I realized this is not a reality. This isn't a realistic possibility for me to handle vet school, which is extremely stressful and demanding while going through chemotherapy. After about 2 cycles of it, I finally gave in and said, this is not going to work. So I didn't go back to school after winter break, but I said, I'm coming back next year, no question. I'm just taking the year off. I arranged it all with the dean. And so I spent that next year doing nothing but cancer treatments. And then the next summer, I researched housing in Davis. I set up my admission to start the school year again. And then I got a phone call that they hadn't got clear margins on my surgery and that I was going to need more surgery and probably more chemo. And so I would have to step out of school for another year. And then over time, I think over that next year, I realized that vet school just wasn't going to happen for me. So I ended up not going back at all. It was just the stress of it would not have been good for my health. And when you're in that demanding of a program, you don't have time to eat well or sleep enough or exercise. And those are the things that I needed to be focused on. So I decided not to go back.
I also think that's an important example of your humanness and the need to have self-compassion when your body is betraying you in a sense, right? Like you're supposed to be young and healthy and you're supposed to get to be in college. You're supposed to get to pursue what you want to do. And all of that just got ripped away from you. There was nothing you could do. Right. And that really sucks, and most people would find that extremely stressful, extremely difficult, extremely painful, and could easily downward spiral in emotion, have depression, anger, which is not conducive for healing your body. But your example is more about resilience and adapting to life.
I think the honest, raw truth is that my experience was both. Because I definitely am proud of the way that I have been able to adapt to the different challenges that have been thrown my way. When I couldn't go back to vet school, I started my own freelance writing and editing business, doing medical writing. So I was still in the medical field, and that gave me flexibility, and it worked for me, and it was something I enjoyed. And then when I became stage 4, when the cancer recurred, I still wanted to work, but I scaled back my client load. I am really proud of the way that I've been able to adapt and just with time, accept that things are different at various stages along the way, and that I needed to adjust my expectations and adjust my goals and change courses when need be. But that's not to say that I didn't have periods where I was really angry and really down. And I think that's completely to be expected too. I think it's unrealistic to expect anyone going through something like cancer to not feel those emotions. And part of it is allowing yourself to feel those emotions and to not judge yourself for it and not beat yourself up about it and not feel like I struggled a lot with feeling like I was not being the poster perfect cancer patient because I wasn't positive all the time. And I was like really angry.
That was not like a ha-ha laugh, but like, it just exemplifies to me, right? We have such a strong pressure, I think on everybody, but especially on women about perfection. Right. Totally. And the need to be perfect. And so even it's like, here you go. Congratulations. You have cancer. Now you better do this perfectly too. It's like, it's horrible.
Exactly. Totally. And your whole world has exploded. You're feeling devastated and grief stricken, but you're expected to stay positive, be grateful, be upbeat, only post like positive, hopeful things on social media. And I couldn't there were periods where I couldn't do all of that, where I was so just filled with grief and fear that I needed to spend the day laying in bed crying or just zoning out watching Netflix. And it took me a long time to accept that that's okay and to let myself do that. And it doesn't make me a bad cancer patient. It doesn't make me someone who's not coping or who's not handling it well. It makes me human. And letting myself feel those emotions allowed me to move through it and then get to the place where I could adapt and change my course and move forward. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't let myself feel what I needed to feel.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Feel the feels. There's your meme right now. There's your meme in quotes. Feel the feels. Because absolutely, you have to feel your pain. And when you try to shortchange that, that's when you actually create suffering from whether you're, trying to avoid the pain or numbing it out or something.
And it comes out in different ways. I mean, that's what I experienced when I became stage 4. Everything that I had experienced when I was stage 3, stage 4 was times 100. And I think I suppressed a lot of those feelings, and I felt like I needed to shift out of it faster than actually my mind needed. My mind needed to spend longer processing, but I wanted to speed up the process and, just get on with it. And so then my anger and my sadness kind of seeped out in my life in ways that I didn't intend it to, because it's there, it's in you, and it needs to be released. And if you don't give it voice and give it space, it's gonna find a way out. And it's so much better to just let yourself feel it than to yell at your husband for not washing a dish when really you're just super angry that you got diagnosed with cancer again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that in and of itself is a traumatic experience. And so it's going to have a very strong emotional impact on you. But I think to your point, it's like getting to a point of acceptance and feeling, at least in some way, that you had some amount of control over your responses or how you can let yourself feel imperfect and at the same time have some sense of hope and confidence that you can keep fighting and continue on and keep doing what you need to do that day, that moment, to just keep moving ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I want to bring Kareth back in and talk about the film a little bit more. So, Kareth, why did you have to make this film? Why is it so important to you?
Well, I think that what Becky just touched on about how this idea of perfection and how she felt like she wasn't doing it right, and that you do need that space to allow those feelings to process and feel all the feels, as you said. That came through really loud and clear in her short story that she had written. And that was the thing that really resonated with me most, is that she allowed herself to feel that. And I think that in mainstream media, especially the stories, kind of the health stories that are out there at the moment in mainstream films and such, they're all so positively upbeat. They don't really show the other side. And so I just think that once again, we're like hammering into women's heads that, that's all that's allowed. And I wanted to make something that was very authentic and true and could be empowering, to other young women that are going through the same experience. And also to show people that are trying to support somebody in the experience how important it is to let that person, voice those feelings, and that it's not really about having the right thing to say. It's just about being there for them so that they can process, because without that process, it just builds up inside, which isn't good for our health either.
And is that sort of why it was so important to really make a key message around the need for a defiant act as part of this film and as part of what you wanted to put out there, kind of like it's okay to give the middle finger to cancer, so to speak?
That's something that Rebecca and I spent a lot of time talking about. The writing process was so much fun, both because we just got to reconnect after a number of years of not really spending a lot of time together, but also just we had some really great conversations about, fuck cancer and cancer sucks, and not everything is #blessed. On set, I gave Rebecca a mug that says #blessed, and I told her she could smash it or cross it out. But we had such amazing conversations around that process that she needed to go through that emotional journey, and so that was something I really wanted to show. And it just really made me think hard about our identity, and as if being diagnosed with cancer is not awful enough, then all of a sudden it calls into question sort of our roots as females with our hair and our breasts. Like, that is our outward identity, that we are female. So if you take those away, what are you sort of left with, and how that is just an added layer of like emotional pondering and questioning. And so there's so much to there's so many layers to anybody's story. And we talk a lot about how Rebecca's story isn't unique. Like, every woman going through trauma is dealing with some parts or the others. But for young women especially, we felt like it was important to have a voice out there that was very authentic, to let them know it was okay that they were feeling all the things.
Yeah, there were certain words I'm like, yeah, this is like a feminist movie, like my hair doesn't define me. My tits don't define me. Is that kind of what you were going for?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's there's not one sole message in it, but that for me was a strong one. I think one of the most enlightening conversations for me was when Rebecca talked about why she decided to shave her head before chemo, and that's why I call it a defiant act, is because she did that to prove to herself that she could move forward into the healing process. And she also said to me, and Rebecca, chime in because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but she wasn't, until she shaved her head, she couldn't really get beyond that. Like, she was sort of focused on what would other people think. And once she shaved her head, she felt pretty fierce and strong and empowered. And she was able to really think about, like, okay, now I might lose my breast. So what does that mean? And, there is the possibility of death, and what might that mean? But before, she was sort of caught up in the superficial a little bit, and that allowed her to get past it. But she did it on her own terms.
And I couldn't really accept that I had cancer, even that I was about to be a cancer patient, that my identity was going to shift that drastically, because it does become a big part of your identity. And shaving my head was such a concrete, physical, visible way for me of coming to terms with that. That knowing I would look in the mirror every day, see a bald head, know that I had cancer, and know that I was going to fight it. And that it was just a big part of coming to terms with the whole thing for me.
And we've learned a lot. I say we, me and all of the producers involved. I'm sure Becky knew a lot of these things, but, we're going to release the film during October, during Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so that first and foremost, other women going through this, young women, know that there's a community out there, that it's okay to feel all the feelings. But then for kind of the mass young audience to know their risks, because the purveying message is still very much like, get a mammogram at 40. And so like Rebecca said, it was very unlikely in her head that she would have cancer because she was so young. And actually, predominantly young people are diagnosed later stage in cancer and tend to move more to stage 4 than older people, because they wait so long to go get checked out and get diagnosed and, just sort of assume that it's a cyst or something that might be benign. So we want to make sure that young women are taking those precautions.
And their concerns are often dismissed too. Just like when I first went to the nurse and she said, "Oh, you don't have family history. Your 25-year-olds don't get breast cancer. This has got to be a fibroadenoma." And she so easily could have just left it at that. And I have friends who had that experience and then ended up stage 4 because they didn't get taken seriously until a year or two later. So it's also about advocating for yourself and knowing that young women can and do get breast cancer, and that if you feel something's wrong with your body, take that seriously and fight for yourself. If you get dismissed, go to a different doctor. Find someone who's going to listen to you and take your concerns seriously.
What else do you hope the film will accomplish? Like, is there any disparity in research dollars for young women or anything else that you are really hoping this film will help people open up some eyes and maybe make a difference in how we handle cancer in young people and survival rates and everything?
Yeah, I have one of my personal major goals with this film is to shine a light on metastatic breast cancer, which is stage 4. Stage 4 is terminal. It's the type of breast cancer that kills. People don't die from stage 0 through 3 breast cancer. They die from stage 4 breast cancer when it spreads to organs, bones, the brain. So the type of cancer that is killing people, which is stage 4, is only receiving 3 to 7% of the research dollars that are raised for breast cancer, which is, to me, horrifying and sends a strong message that we as a society and are just have decided that stage 4 patients are a lost cause and that it's not worth figuring out better treatments for them. Early detection is obviously important, and I'm not advocating for taking money away from that and ending those campaigns. But there's a huge disparity in the way the funds are distributed and in the awareness. The vast majority of people do not even know what metastatic means, let alone that it doesn't receive nearly enough research or funding. And so even though this film is about a stage of my journey when I was stage 3, I am now stage 4, and I really wanted to bring awareness to the issues surrounding stage 4 and inspire people and encourage people to learn more about it and hopefully donate to the nonprofits that are funding stage 4 research.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting asks that the organization Mediviver is making is, like, it feels very practical that if 30% of people that are diagnosed with lower stages of cancer will progress to stage 4. So it feels like 30% of that research funding should go to stage 4. And so that's at least, and that is their main goal and ask. So we would love for people to become aware. And as Rebecca says, continue to donate also to that organization and other organizations that support stage 4.
Yeah, that sounds pretty important to me, especially because, and I mean, you're so right. It hasn't really dawned on me until our conversation that so much of what you hear covered is all about prevention. And yes, that's all well and good, but it's like, how about humanity and compassion and care and help and support after diagnosis? And especially, as you said, at that critical point from stage 3 to stage 4, of making, continuing to support the kind of care and love and connection that people need to stay strong and resilient and hopeful for their future.
Absolutely. And recognizing that stage 4 patients are not lost causes. We should not just be left to die because it's currently considered a terminal disease. That's the only reason that it's terminal, is because we haven't dedicated enough attention, research dollars to the disease. We can change that. And if we understand metastasis more thoroughly and find better treatments that can extend the lives of stage 4 patients and improve their quality of lives, that filters down to benefit the entire breast cancer community. If you take death off of the table for stage 4 patients, you're taking death off the table for all breast cancer patients. So it's such an important cause that I'm really hoping more people become educated and aware and compassionate towards.
Definitely. I'm sure listeners are going to be curious. What's your current health like?
So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on that just quickly.
Sure.
When I was diagnosed stage 4 in 2014, the cancer had spread to my bones. And then I responded very well to treatment, and it completely knocked the cancer back, and I had no evidence of cancer until 2016, this past November, when it spread to my brain. And my brain was treated. And so I've spent the last 8 to 9 months recovering, but still no evidence of disease from the neck down, and my brain was recovering. And then last week, I found out that the cancer has returned in my bones. And 2 days ago, I found out that it might be back in my brain. We're not sure about that yet. So things are pretty up in the air right now. And it just highlights more and more the need for stage 4 research. The fight for us never ends, and we really need better and more treatments to help us get through it.
What would you say to someone who was at your square one in the office, piece of paper, tears? What would you say to that person who's listening right now?
Oh, that is a really, really good question. And it's actually something I've thought a lot about, and I haven't come up with a wonderful answer to.
An honest answer is probably the most helpful.
Yeah. I would say that things are going to get really hard, but you're going to get through it, and you will change in ways that you can't really comprehend right now, but it's not all bad. And when I say it's not all bad, I mean the ways in which you're going to change, like the ways in which my identity evolved and the ways in which I grew as a person. I would also say just advocate for yourself, advocate for yourself, advocate for yourself. It's so important. And feel the feels. Just, if it's going to get really hard, and that's okay. And no one judges you for that. And feel whatever it is that you need to feel. If you need to go smash some plates, go smash some plates. And everyone who loves you is going to support you and help you in any way that they can to get through this.
Yeah, that's a lovely note to end on. But before we go, Kareth, can you let us know how we can connect and support you in this amazing film and just help it to reach as many people and be as successful as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. You can visit and see the film on our website, bareshortfilm.com, and on all of the social medias. On Facebook, we're Bare a Short Film, and on Twitter and Instagram, we're Bare Short Film. So watch and share. And we're asking all young women to be aware and make sure that they do regular self-exams, in light of October's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. But there will be lots of fun activities, so please follow us on social and share it with your friends so that we can get the word out.
Well, we will do. And thank you guys both so much for being here today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And that's our show. Thanks for listening all the way through. Be sure to check out bareshortfilm.com and watch the movie and then share with anyone who you think could benefit from the message. I also would love to have you as a Body Kindness Insider. It's free. It's easy to sign up. You just visit bodykindnessbook.com and click Get Started. Now, what you'll get is instant access to a free Body Kindness e-course I have. It includes a chapter of the book if you don't have it already, which is on Amazon and wherever books are sold. It's called Body Kindness as well. You'll also get a health and happiness journal that my clients love to use instead of trackers and calorie counters. This is much more positive, but you can still observe things like how you feel with food and movement. And then you get a short video course and reflection guide. You'll also get some follow-ups from me as you start to connect to this journey of body kindness, and some brief check-ins. And I share more about my personal story and background. And I'd love to have you there, especially as we go into the holiday season here in November and December. I'm going to be doing some great stuff with the insiders, and I would love to have you involved in that, and then something really cool that I'm opening up in the new year. So to get started, just simply go to bodykindnessbook.com, click the Get Started button, give your name and email, and I'll take it from there.